Welcome to the Red Roof Recovery Show, a program to soften the path of recovery from substance and behavioral addictions. This beautiful theme song that we're listening to is called Greatest Bravery, and it comes from a CD titled The Master Key, and it's from my friend, my mentor, a very talented singer, songwriter, musician. His name is Russell Allen Scott. Thanks so much for this, Russell. I'm your host, Tanya MacIntyre, and I am here to share my experience, strength, and hope with you around my own recovery from drugs and alcohol. Red Roof Recovery is founded on the principles of something called CBT, Cognitive Behavior Therapy, along with a few other tools of therapy. Red Roof Recovery prefers to focus on tools of therapy rather than schools of therapy because there are lots of schools of therapy, and they tend to practice what they deem to be effective and acceptable for their agenda. Red Roof Recovery is more about evidence-based solutions, about the latest scientific findings, because those are evolving all the time, and also about inclusion and non-judgmental consideration. We like to customize a program for you because this is all about you. There are hundreds of tools to choose from. The key is to find whatever it is that's going to work for you, because we're all individuals. What works for me may not work for you, and vice versa. So the thing is to keep looking. And, sometimes that can be an exhaustive search. Sometimes you're going to find something that resonates with you sooner than later. The key is to keep on looking. And then once you find something that does resonate with you, like I found with cognitive behavioral therapy and a few other tools that I'll be sharing with you, once you find something that works for you, I want you to grab onto that. And with both hands, hold on tight and just do more of that. So the recovery journey can sometimes be a bumpy ride, but I like to focus on a strength-based approach to recovery. On every episode of Red Roof Recovery, we're going to be talking about different tools from cognitive behavioral therapy, along with something called rational emotive behavior therapy. That's just another form of CBT. And also MET, motivational enhancement therapy. So those are the three key things. One of the major tenets of cognitive behavior therapy is about acceptance. So we're going to be talking a lot about acceptance on the show, every episode. I'm joined today by Tammy Bannon. Tammy and I have been friends since 2004. Our career paths crossed in the real estate industry. And then I ended up leaving that industry after a few years for a couple of reasons. I wasn't making any money. It took me 2 years to even start making any money to break even. But after 4 years, as luck would have it, my husband had an opportunity to go to Mallorca, Spain. So I didn't hesitate to go and laze around on the Mediterranean for a while. So while I did that in 2007, Tammy went on to become a top-selling realtor, where she enjoyed many years in Ontario and just has recently moved to Nova Scotia, where she's going to be blazing new trails there. Tammy is also a certified NLP and hypnotherapy practitioner. She's a life coach. She's helped me in invaluable ways. And she's a specialized guided meditation facilitator. Welcome to Red Roof Recovery, Tammy. Thanks for joining us all the way from Nova Scotia.
Oh, thanks so much, Tanya. I'm really happy to be here. I appreciate you asking me.
Well, it's not easy to come on to a program and expose our vulnerabilities and, sometimes what can be perceived as moral failings to the world. So yeah. I'm really grateful that you've had the courage to do that with me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. Actually, exposing vulnerability is something I'm very conscious of every day. I don't know if you've listened to any of Brene Brown's exposés on vulnerability, but they're wonderful. And practicing vulnerability, in my experience, has given other people around me the permission to also be vulnerable. And it just changes how we react and respond to each other.
I love that. Yeah, I agree. And, I know in all of our years as friends, we've shared a lot of intimate stories about a lot of life's trials and tribulations, including, things like homelessness and addictions and abuse that you have, you've experienced firsthand. So I want to talk a little bit about that with you, some intimate deals, especially intimate details around, especially around the acceptance of that, right? Because one of the major components of my recovery has been acceptance. Not an easy thing to do, right? So we're talking about not only accepting ourselves unconditionally, and a lot of that has to do for me learning to love myself, which is an ongoing evolutionary journey for sure. But then we've got unconditional life acceptance. And another one of the tough ones is the unconditional other acceptance. So let's first talk about the toughest question, and that is, what is acceptance? And I know you're going to have a fabulous answer for this.
You know, one of the things that sticks into my mind to say right now is to talk about a phrase I heard somebody once say, that life is happening for you, not to you. And so I believe we've been conditioned most of our lives to judge. And I know you talked a little bit about judgment before, to make our opinions and protect ourselves. And we then are sort of conditioned to become victims of the circumstances that befall our lives. And when you can change the way that you look at things, suddenly the things you're looking at will change. And when you change your perspective from life is happening to me, I'm the victim of life, to life is happening for me, your level of acceptance almost immediately increases, because your perception of any situation then can't help but change. So overall acceptance is a practiced behavior, I believe, and we have to unlearn our conditioning to judge. Another thing that's helped me with acceptance is, you talked about this too, Tanya, is self-love. When we love ourselves, again, just as when we are vulnerable, we give other people around us the opportunity then to love themselves freely. The fear of judgment comes from, or rather, the act of judgment comes from the fear of being judged. And so when you notice how you judge or accept or don't accept others, you can really begin to ask yourself the deeper questions. What is it about me that I'm not accepting that creates this platform of judgment? And it's really just the practice of thinking through before reacting, which is what we're used to doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, definitely, part of what I study every day with cognitive behavior therapy is exactly what you've just outlined. It's not what's happening around us, it's how we're responding to what's happening around us, right? Because we're all products of our environment. And we were just talking in the studio about this, about how I've interviewed some refugees, who have been victims of war and war crimes. And, spending their many, many years in refugee camps waiting to be resettled somewhere. And one of the most recent success stories was a gentleman whose family settled in Antigonish, Nova Scotia. And his family was ripped apart by the Syrian war. They spent 5 years in a refugee camp and finally settled in Antigonish, Nova Scotia, where they started to rebuild their lives and their business. So they were in business of making chocolate. And who doesn't love chocolate? So they started up the business again in Antigonish. And I saw on social media recently that Tarek has just opened a storefront, a retail storefront on the Halifax Harbour front, which, of course, the municipality there, the government's spent billions of dollars developing the harbour front in Halifax. It's absolutely gorgeous now. So yeah, he has a retail storefront. Peace by Chocolate is the name.
I'm going to have to go see them.
Yes, they have a vibrant online business as well. They ship all over the world. So Peace by Chocolate. Look those up. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah.
So I love talking to people about, coming to a level of acceptance and living through life's adversities. Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, is another great example. He survived 4 concentration camps and writes about it in Man's Search for Meaning, one of the most powerful books that I've read. And I also use something called rational emotive behavioral therapy. And in your training with NLP, I'm sure You're quite versed in how important it is to be aware of how we're speaking to ourselves, right? Because I know I speak to myself in my head more than I speak to anyone. So I try to make it a nice place to be. And that comes with awareness to what is the narrative that I'm feeding in there? What am I subjecting myself to? And what are the messages that I'm telling myself about everything? And, my experiences are great to teach the lessons of what not to do after you've made a mistake. For instance, sending a text that should have been left unsent, or the email, or the voicemail, right?
Yes.
And it's letting it just sit with it and wait instead of reacting, and just learn how to accept and then respond if there's even any need to respond. Sometimes silence is the best response, right?
And I also think it's important to understand and notice the difference between a response and a reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So a reaction will be based on the feelings that came up when you heard what you heard. A response will be based on what you heard the other person saying. So the emotion that enters into it often skews the rational thought.
Oh, absolutely. How many times have we heard a conversation between people and said, that's not what I said at all?
That's not what I said at all.
Right?
Yeah. And you were absolutely right to make the connection between NLP and MET, because that's what it is. And in our minds, it's actually neuroplasticity. So it's highways of habitual thought that have now become instinctive. And often your brain wants to do that. It wants to make sense of everything. So it loves to loop things together. So when this happens, do that. It's an IFTT program, if this, then that, just mathematical. And it often becomes so knee-jerk, you don't even notice you're doing it. So the key then becomes noticing. And you said it beautifully. Watch your language. Mm-hmm. In my coaching email signature, I'll say, watch your language. It's the screenplay of your life. How you language both your inner and outer dialogue creates the story or the moving picture that is your life.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely. Mm-hmm. It starts with our words, the language that we're using, because that feeds directly into the thoughts that we're creating with the committee in my head there. And then those thoughts create my moods, my emotions, my feelings, and all of that correlates into my results, my behaviors. So once I'm aware of what I'm feeding my thoughts with my words, then I can start formulating a more positive loop, right? To interrupt that negative loop that runs in my head that never stops or shuts up.
Whether you notice it or not, it's running.
Yes.
So I think another really great thing is you can't change what you don't notice. So until you recognize that you're doing it, change isn't possible, right? And so creating new habits and changing your inner dialogue. One step deeper than that is, you said, your programming, which is leads to your thoughts, and then your thoughts lead to your feelings, and your feelings lead to your actions, and then your actions lead to your results. And I want to take that one step further. Your results and your feelings and your thoughts and your actions all contribute to your vibrational energy. And if we're talking from a law of attraction standpoint, then that vibrational energy, after you've processed programming, thoughts, feelings, actions, results, then create what you put out to invite what you will see.
Well, we're learning more about that with, movies like What the Bleep. I wasn't a big fan of The Secret because it talked a little too much about money and material things.
Yes.
But What the Bleep, I think, focused more on the physics, which I think is extremely important. I mean, I learned in grade school that Albert Einstein said it best, that energy is everything and everything is energy. So we're basically just bouncing blobs of energy, it's crashing into each other and trying to harmonize with each other and the universe.
Yeah. And again, take it that one step further. We're cellular beings. At the smallest level of our existence is a subatomic cell. And the cells respond to our thoughts in our mind. So, for instance, you cut yourself, you have the thought is automatic pain, and the brain's response to pain is to heal. So our cells then go busy to get to the healing. Well, that's a cut. However, if you have an emotional cut, it's the same thing. So it requires the same healing and the same attention and the same cellular construction to bring about the end.
I think our medical communities are finally starting to merge the mental and physical health components, right?
Yeah.
We need to stop distinguishing, I think, between, mental health, because it's all connected. Mental health is directly connected to our physical health and vice versa, right? It's all running together.
Well, then find me a person who doesn't have a mental health something.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Right? So, and I do not want to minimize how difficult it can be to navigate through the events of your life. But essentially, you can't escape that. You've been programmed to react and respond in a certain way. And so throughout your life, that's what you'll do until you notice you're doing it and decide whether or not it serves you. And I think you said this earlier. Does it serve me? Is it productive? Will it move me forward? And you were talking about acceptance, which again, all comes down to accepting yourself. Once you can do that, then accepting others becomes entirely different.
So let's talk a little bit about navigating life's circumstances, because you and your family, I know the intimate details of your upbringing. So are you comfortable sharing how the paths were headed in the same direction with you and your sister, and then suddenly just one twist of fate changed everything?
That was a really great, I don't mind to share that, Tanya. And I'll continue to use that in my coaching too. I use this example. My younger sister and I were so close always. From as early as I can remember, we were really bonded. And our growing up wasn't great. And my sister was 11 and I was 12. We ran away from home. And we stayed away from home for a couple of weeks, and we chose different places to live, in a locker room, in friends' houses, in friends' gardens, in the schoolyard, a lot of different places. And it was challenging, but it still felt better than being home. But we had these two aunties that stayed with us because my mom with 4 children had to work. So our aunties looked after us, and they were older. Both of them had lost their husbands. And one of them, when we ran away, somehow got a message to one of my friends that she was afraid she was going to have a heart attack because she was so worried about us. And I was so young that I didn't really realize that was just an expression. I really actually thought that she was going to have a heart attack. And so I got terrified. And I, at that moment, decided to go back home. And my younger sister did not. And from that moment forward, our lives took on a completely different direction. And every decision that she made from that point was in a completely opposite direction than mine. And our lives now very much demonstrate that. And not too long ago, my younger sister and I was driving her somewhere. She is on disability now and lives in a rooming house and lives financially, hand to mouth. And I was driving her somewhere and I noticed her staring at me. You can feel when somebody's staring at you. And I looked over at her and she had tears in her eyes. And I said, "Oh my gosh, what's wrong?" And she said to me at that moment, "I realized that I could have everything you have if I just would have made that one decision differently." And she was right. And now she's 55, and it's challenging to convince her that she could still change. She has 50 years of really great conditioning and programming to fight through, not to mention addiction issues, impulse control, and her own series of mental health problems. So, but that was a big example. Different lives, different choices create different results, and yeah, we're still both sad about it till this
And
day.
how frustrating it must be for you to be helpless around the whole situation to help her. I mean, you've tried to help, and sometimes,
Yeah. So
where do you draw the line between helping and what is it?
enabling.
Enabling. Yeah, it's a
That
tough
was
one.
really a big lesson for me. I did really well in real estate. So a couple of years ago, I decided I was going to rent her an apartment. And I would put up the reputation and the first and last like deposit. And I went in and spoke on her behalf and got her an apartment. And she didn't have much skin in the game. That's the truth of that. And so a year later, we were in tenant court and she was being evicted. And that was a really big lesson for me and here we are back at acceptance, Tanya, to accept that there were some things about Cindy's life that I just could not change, fix, make better. And that it wasn't my responsibility to do that. And there was a lifetime of sorrow wrapped up in that thought, and letting it go and just accepting her for who she was now and who she, wants to be, and embracing the love that we can share, and thinking about what I do want to talk about with her and to share with her and to be with her. How do I want to show up? And there was massive acceptance in that I let go now of fixing her, of saving her, of, bringing her on this journey. She's on her own journey. And my job is only to accept her and love her, which of course means accepting that I cannot fix, change, or control everybody and everything around me, and letting go and just appreciating the beauty that is, not what I think could or should be, but is now.
Yes. When we start using those absolute words, right? Like have to, must, should, she should know better. She must behave this way.
Yeah.
Those absolute words, we can just go into a downward spiral very quickly there for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So Cindy, my little sister, really taught me acceptance. I love her differently now because I can see her beauty without wanting to save her from her ugly. That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But then how did you deal with the feelings of maybe letting her down? Because I remember, it was a horrible time for you because she said, how can you do this to me?
Yeah, that was a horrible time. And I had really great friends like you who would help me because it was my propensity to fall into that. It was my responsibility and or my fault. And my friends would help me to keep me on track and embrace that I'm still her sister and I still love her and I can still have a relationship. And it was hard for her because I then it meant that I wouldn't say yes as frequently, and she had difficulty hearing no from me, and for a while it was very tense. And then really I think something happened, Tanya, and she all of a sudden it was like, okay, I was as far as I could go with her. Now I can't go any further. So then it changed how she dealt with me also, because I think she recognized that I wasn't going to do those things anymore. And I wasn't going to hear those cries the way that I did before. And she still does it. And I still, I've programmed some answers. I've sort of scripted some great responses that help me and shut her down from it, and one of them is, it doesn't matter. I love you anyway, no matter where you are or what you do. And my job isn't to judge what you do. It's just to love you. So how am I going to love you today? I'll say things like that. And they really turn her mind away from the poor me, you need to fix me, you have everything, I have nothing, to the I love you so much, thank you for sharing with me. And I just this morning I did it again. with her, and you brought me to this, Tanya. One day you said to me, I was moaning about the things that I didn't like. And you said to me, well, what do you want? And so I used that with my sister too. Well, what do you want? Let's talk about that.
I use that with my family members.
Sometimes she'll just tell me to shut up and hang up on me, and that's okay. And then a few days later, she'll call me again. So,
it's not an easy question to answer, which is why I encourage everybody to ask and answer 3 questions every day. What do I want? What am I doing about it? And how do I feel about what I'm doing about it? Yeah. It's so important, and it's not a nice place to go sometimes. It can be deeply dark and scary, but it's important, I think, to get that awareness of ourselves and to make ourselves accountable for the decisions we're making.
And I want to just address the word want, because we touched a little bit on the law of attraction, and if the language is want, then the energy system will bring more want. So what do I intend for today? What is my intention for the day? What do I intend to do about it? And how do I intend for my feelings to grow because of it?
I love that. Intentions first. Thank you, Tammy. Okay. No more wanting. From now on, we're going to be setting intentions. Excellent.
Yeah.
So what is your comeback when she says, all I need is just some help with my rent this month? What do you say?
Oh, so that's not a question she would ask me. She would, but I
need
get
groceries.
Where you're going. So
I need is help with groceries. What do you say?
My cat needs to be fixed.
Right.
I need a pedicure. I need a manicure. I need cat food. I need cat litter. Those are things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will offer her other solutions. So I might say, could you call the Humane Society and see if they have any donations and get one of your friends to pick them up for you? You know what? Cats are a luxury. So you got to really start planning for the future. Every month this comes to you. So every month you got to make some plans, and you're really great at that. So I trust you'll be able to do it. I use a lot of that language with her. If anybody can do this, it's you. You're so resourceful. I mean, look at what you've overcome. And I'll use that language to empower her, because she's coming to me like she's a victim, and I don't see her that way. I see her as a very powerful woman who really just got trapped in habitual life. And so I will give her back her power as often as I can. Man, you're the perfect person for that job. I know you can do it. If you need any help, brainstorming, I'll be happy to throw some suggestions at you.
I love that.
And she still gets, sometimes she'll take it. Other times she just gets really mad at me. That's okay. Yeah.
Setting the boundaries is important. Yeah. And not only setting them, Tammy, but keeping them there, right?
Setting them's easy.
Yeah. Maintaining them. Sticking to your guns, right? Yeah. Not easy, like right? It's and of course, then you get that tough love sentiment, which I don't like. This is not tough love at all. This is setting boundaries and keeping them. And it has nothing to do with toughening up love. I don't think.
It's authentic representation of both of us. I'm not going to listen to your problem. I don't want to have any respect for your problem. What I want to respect and love is you. Your problem can go jump off a cliff. I don't like your problem. You, I love. Right? So I'm not going to engage in pouring energy into the pot that is your problem. No, I'll put all my energy into the pot that is your love, and you're beautiful and you're perfect just as you are.
Awesome.
That's where I'll put my acceptance.
You're amazing, Tammy. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk about acceptance with me today. You're an amazing woman. And for our listeners, if you would like to get in touch with one of the most amazing life coaches that I know, Tammy at tammybannon.com, and you can talk to her about her coaching services. Thank you, Tammy. Remember to talk to yourself like you talk to your best friends. May the force be with you. And remember, you are the force.